What is the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to hiring a VA?
Oh, the biggest mistake is not conducting due diligence. And it may be because this person is a trusted referral from one of your closest friends or colleagues, one of your groups. And so they say, oh, I have a VA, I know. And so you're like, well, I really trust this person. They're doing great. They sing the praises of this person. So I'm just going to go ahead and hire them. And due diligence isn't just about contacting references and having conversations with them or doing background checks, which also is part of it, though, that I absolutely do those things for my clients. But it's also about, let's have a conversation. Let me interview you as though I don't know you and you're coming off the street. And let me ask you some questions. Does this make sense for us to work together? Do you even like to do the things that I'm asking you to do? So often clients think, well, she's a coach, I'm a coach, she loves that assistant. Why wouldn't I love it? But maybe you want the assistant to do completely separate things. Oftentimes, VAs, especially when they've been with that client for a long time, they get really close to their clients. They don't want to lose them. So maybe they're performing services for that client, but they no longer perform those services for other clients. They do other things, but because that client is so special to them, they don't dissolve those services for them, but it's not something they offer. There's just a lot of different things. And the due diligence not only solidifies that experience, but when you bump up to issues when you're working together, as everyone does, you don't immediately think, oh no, did I hire the wrong person? Oh no, let me take this over, because that's the other side of it. And a lot of my clients have already tried to hire the right person and hired the wrong person simply because they hired the first person that they ever spoke with. If you were in a company and there was a bad hire and your boss and the HR department came to you and they were like, gosh, this person seemed like we could have done a little bit better here. How many candidates did you interview? What made this candidate stand out over the other candidates? And you're like, oh, I didn't even interview anyone else. I didn't even look at another resume. I mean, imagine the shock. Imagine the shock that would take place in that company. And you may be a company of one, but you still owe it to yourself to have that due diligence. And yes, it takes time. It doesn't have to be a lot of time, but yes, you have to slow down. This is an important hire for your company. You have to do the due diligence.
Yeah, I think that rush also maybe comes from the fact that a lot of people kind of leave it a bit late before they finally decide to work with a virtual assistant, and therefore they are like struggling to get everything done. So they just want to hire the first person. Would you say that's true?
Yes, it's a very popular question when I'm being interviewed is, when's the perfect time to hire a VA? And my answer is always the same: before you need one. Because by the time you need one, you're already starting to accumulate that time debt if you're not already in it already. And you have to remember that no matter how much of a rock star VA you are hiring, that person has to onboard you and you have a responsibility to onboard them, right? Imagine any senior executive coming into your company. You're hiring them because they're senior, right? This person knows what they're doing. They still have an onboarding time in that company, and your VA is no different. You have to get a working rhythm down. You have to get what good looks like down. You're getting the communication patterns down. You're doing all these things so that you can work seamlessly together. That does not happen overnight, even with the best VAs. I know some VAs, and when they start working with their clients, they're like, let's knock it out in a day. So in a day, they'll spend the whole day together working through all passwords and systems and processes and funnels. So they'll do like a real deep dive kind of a day. And a lot of clients would think, oh my gosh, I don't have a day to give. I'm like, well, that's fine, but you do have to have some time. You should be meeting with your VA daily when you have that first hire. There's going to be a lot of questions, and that's normal. But if you're hiring someone and they're coming in to put out all your fires and you're already behind, that's not fair to them. It's not a really fun situation to come into, but it also, again, backs up that timing for how long you're actually going to feel relief more than, wow, now I just hired someone who has more questions for me, instead of having the mindset of, I am so excited to share my business with you and take this off my plate. Those are completely two different mindsets.
So speaking of hiring the VA before you actually gravely need one. I know that there's a technique that you suggest to people in terms of budgeting for a VA. Would you like to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so we talk about creating a line item for your business. You know you're going to be hiring someone in the future, right? Just like if you wanted to save it for a car or a house or a vacation, you know you're going to want that. So every time that you sell one of your products or services or engagements, put a little bit of that away. And that is the line item that you would pay for a VA. And pretty soon you have it enough tucked away so you can say, oh, I do have a budget. I do have a budget to hire someone, because a lot of clients are saying, oh, but I'm so busy, but it's not in my budget. Well, it's never going to be in your budget unless you put it there. Nothing magically enters in unless it's some like government or taxes and they're like come demanding money from you. We have to put in what we want. And I have a client, it was the first client that actually came to me and said, we did what you said. It's so awesome. So they actually put an administration fee. Unbeknownst to the client just gets this engagement service fee. They don't know how all the funds are being split up, right? But on the back end, the client does. They have part of that portion is the administration fee. And so they put it aside to actually work with me. And then now they have it on all their engagements. So each engagement, they know that this VA already has a way to be paid. And they said, had we not done that, it would have been a lot longer. But it also got them thinking all the time, we're going to be hiring a VA. We need to, document this, or we need to make sure that we're doing this correctly each time. So when the VA comes in here, they're not confused. Like, well, you said you do it this way, but I've seen it go out this way a few times. Which way is it exactly? And it's really been preparing them the whole time. And whether or not someone hires me, that is a great way to ensure that you have a budget for a VA. And whether you're going to take it from certain client engagements or whether you're just going to put it aside in savings and add it up that way, you really do have to have it as a line item. Just the same way you would say, I want to hire another coach for my business, or I want to have another consultant for my business, or I want to hire a new marketing team. Not planning for it puts such a strain on your finances, because then it looks like you're finding money, like you're looking for kind of like a lottery fund somewhere in your own finances. But when you budget and you plan for it, it's much more, okay, well, I do know that I can afford this, and I do know that I'm going to pay for this. And it becomes a lot easier to work with than looking for some large sum of money to just drop from the sky.
I love that, that technique to set aside money for a VA as if that VA is already working for you and you have an admin fee that you are paying this future VA, right? For those listening who don't know what a line item is, Melissa is referring to having a specific place inside your budget that you have a sum that you put aside for hiring a VA. Let's talk about this trend that we've been seeing lately, which is an influx of VA services from emerging countries, usually for a lower fee or a lower package price. What's your view on that? And is there a trade-off there that maybe we need to be aware of if we're considering a VA from an emerging country?
Yes, there is a trade-off. And, if that is all you can afford and you need some help, I would not tell anyone not to do that. I absolutely wouldn't. I'm not saying that you can't get a really great VA from another country, but the trade-off is the type of work. And culturally, it's not always common for them to anticipate their clients' needs. They're waiting to be assigned to do something. It's a lot more delegating than when you hire a true assistant. So the mark of any true assistant, whether human or AI, is the ability to anticipate your needs. And historically, VAs in other countries aren't known for anticipating needs. They're known for being great task takers. So the trade-off is there is that delegation. Now, if you think, wow, I'm an awesome delegator, then that's probably a great route for you. I know a lot of clients and they are awesome delegators. It comes naturally to them. I think they're actually really great at it. And so they never mind that kind of work. But a lot of clients are like, gosh, it's so much work. I have to tell people how to do something exactly the way it has to be done. And if I were to have skipped even the tiniest step, they're not going to do it. They're not going to be like, oh, I think she missed a step. Like, let me just go ahead and do it. Or let me even ask her or him about it. And so that's often the issue. There's usually a language barrier. Some of the locations don't always match up. They don't really always know what they're scheduling for. They don't know about traffic. That can be difficult when they're doing meetings. If someone throws any sarcasm into it, which is very common in the States for people to be sarcastic in their emails, it's very hard for the VAs to pick up on that. But there's, I think, a lot of things that are really cost effective when you're hiring a VA. Things like research and spreadsheets and database. And I think a lot of those things are so great too, because if there's that huge time difference, then it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter that they're working when they're working. It just gets done based on the deadline. The other thing is, if that's the place where you start out, at least you have a budget. At least you're starting and you're getting used to paying someone else do the work. I have a lot of clients come to me and say, I've been using VAs like this for a while. I'm ready to level up. And it's also given them an example of, you know, were they a good delegator? Did they enjoy it? Did they like it? What didn't they like about it? What do they really want now? What would be really beneficial? But it got them in the habit of working with somebody. And that's really important, because as much as you might think, oh my gosh, it would be so great to get some help, when it comes down to it, there are times where you're going to be like, oh, I could do this myself and it would take me no time. If I have to explain this to somebody, it's going to take me some time. Let me just do it myself. It just becomes this habit that becomes hard to break. And so I think there's a lot of reasons that you would use a VA overseas, but as long as you know what you're getting into and you have the right expectations, that's key. Because a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to pay a VA in the Philippines or Asia this amount of money, and I'm going to get this great service, and their expectations are not met, and then they're super, super frustrated. But if they go into it saying, okay, I'm going to have my expectation that this person is going to do this research and fill out this spreadsheet for me correctly based on this, and I'm going to get my money's worth out of it, that's a much, much better way to think about it. When you go in knowing that you have to be very clear, when you go into it knowing that you're hiring from cultures who don't push back, they're not going to tell you, I don't think that's right. I think we could do it a better way. Are you sure? And some clients, they really want that. They're looking for a VA to help them and to say, could this be done better? Could this be done a different way? Do you see anything wrong with this? And you're not going to get that historically, statistically, when you hire. It's just not part of their culture. Their culture is to be extremely accommodating, to be extremely kind, and to do exactly what you say, no more, no less.
That makes sense. It's a good entry point, and it can be a great experience, but it really depends on what you need, what you expect that VA to do, and to be aware of those cultural differences.